evening, everyone. It's Tuesday, September 24th, 2013, and I'm opening up this meeting of the Rhinebeck Central School District Board of Education. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the September 10th, 2013 regular meeting?
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by
Second.
Laura. Any amendments to those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's Shulkin, Burns, Fleischauer, and Dalbert. Abstaining, Lyons and Quinteros. That motion passes. We move on now to our public comment part of the meeting. If there are any member of the public who would like to speak, raise your hand and be recognized. No? Okay, then we'll move on to reports and discussion. We start with our principals' reports. Good evening, gentlemen.
And what I would just mention before we start, that one of the things that I've asked all three of our building principals to include in their reports is an update on where we're at with academic intervention services. So they'll include that in their reports, but I would expect they'll have a lot of other things to share with us as well. So.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back. So I just wanted to start with just some things that are happening at Chancellor. I always like to start the year out letting you know our numbers. Right now we have about 450 students enrolled at Chancellor, 23 classes. As always, we did a lot of work over the summer on curriculum work, aligning it with the Common Core. This year, I think more than ever, we put a lot of time and work into aligning our units with the Common Core and picking up where we left off last year. One of the things we did most recently was actually put, this past Friday actually, put a representative from each grade who, the first unit that's completed in every grade. And everyone brought their first unit to the table. They sat down with Julie LeGuin, the OSCE consultant, myself, Marvin Krebs, and they got together to look at a third grade unit for some quality assurance. So instead of everyone they each brought their own units and talked about how it's been going, but ultimately we had everyone look at a third grade unit, take a look at not really a rubric, but kind of a list of all the reading, writing, Common Core standards and all the little components that went with it to see what's aligned and what's not. So we had an opportunity to do that. The goal being moving forward, hopefully the next time we get to sit with Julie LeGuin, the OSCE consultant, myself, and Marvin with grade reps, we'll take a look at the tri-state unit rubric that'll help us do the same. So this was kind of the beginning of, now that we've written a lot of it, taking a look at quality assurance and making sure there's consistency between K through 5. So we took some time to do that last Friday. In addition, most recently, Pinwheels for Peace. We have done that every year. Fawn Johnson has been with us. She kind of leads that charge, and it's, as you probably know, but if not, it's a worldwide art installation. And every student K to 5 in our building created their own pinwheel. And what we do is there's an International Day of Peace, which this year happened to be on the 21st, which was a Saturday. So we actually planted all of ours in front of the building. You may have seen them on the 18th. So they kind of stayed all through the weekend. This year we laminated them and organized them by grade so that students can kind of see where their pinwheel was. And we, as always, have parents and their children come in early on that day and work with Fawn and other staff to kind of plant them and set them up before the day starts. So we were able to do that. Just took them down yesterday. We are, as always, early in the year having conversations about morning enrichment programs. So teachers are giving me proposals to work through. We have a few, I believe, on your agenda tonight, and there'll be more to come. As always, also, in early October, we do a third grade safety day. This year we will be missing Dutchess County Poison Control. They're not going to be participating anymore. I guess the year, I've reported in this forum that in the years they've had some cuts. A lot of these kind of organizations have. This year, to a point where they don't have anyone to send. However, we will have Troop K, Trooper Wilson, stepping away to safety. Rhinebeck Fire Department Smokehouse, the Heart Association, talking about healthy habits. As well as fire safety with Mary Y, one of our lunch and recess aides that works in that industry as well. We recently had our open house on Wednesday, September 11th, which was K to 3, and 3 to 5 was on September 18th. I did want to thank Laura and Deidre for representing the board and coming to speak to everyone. It was nice to have you. One thing we added this year, since there were a lot of questions about Common Core and state assessments, I provided some links on Engage NY, which is really kind of a depository of all this stuff coming down from the state. They have some really good parent-friendly links that talk about, they have videos, things like that, but they talk about what the Common Core is, what the state assessments are measuring, things of that nature. So I handed that out. I also put it in the newsletter this past week, and there's a hyperlink on the actual newsletter on our website as well for parents to refer to. I did want to congratulate one of our students. Every year we do a library summer reading contest. Iris Hoiwaso won 10,336 pages she read over the summer. She did a great job. She won a trophy, a pizza party with Holy Cow letters for her entire class. I want to thank the PTSO for taking care of that. Myself, Ms. Locks, as well as David Wolfen, she happens to be in David's class, and Ms. Allstat had lunch with the entire class last week. So I just wanted to kind of publicly congratulate her. And by the way, the students that participated read over 82,470 pages over the summer. So that kind of puts it into perspective. 10,000 of them was one student. It's pretty impressive. Also, last week we began with grade 3, and we'll actually fold in grade 4 and 5 with, if you remember, I always never know how to pronounce it, but PADAPE, PDAPE, which is basically preventing alcohol and drug abuse through primary education. We started that last year with K through 2, partnership with St. Francis Hospital and one of our highly regarded substitutes, Larry Miller. So we were able this year to accommodate that K through 5, very developmentally appropriate lessons in every single grade. You may have heard me mention this last year, and it was really sparked through the Rhinebeck Youth Coalition, that really initial conversation we had. So that's where we're at right now. It's obviously connected to our health and wellness curriculum as well. In addition, I have a handout for Rick Campbell. We had a partnership with the Rhinebeck Science Foundation to do some work around writing and extended responses in math and science specifically. And one of the things I wanted to just hand out, please feel free to grab one and pass it on. You don't have to read it now, but I just thought it actually does a much better job of describing where we're at with Mr. Campbell. What we did was, last year we had a Saturday workshop around writing. He works with Bart, and one of the things he kind of had an opportunity to talk about, if you don't know, was exactly that, kind of getting kids basically interested in writing, getting them jazzed up in writing, anticipatory sets, things like that, and then what to do with these seed ideas. Really amazing stuff. I'm doing a terrible job describing actually his expertise, but that's why I wanted to share this with you. It's actually after they had a July meeting, before the upcoming visits, which will start tomorrow. Marvin Krebs and I had an opportunity to meet with him the first day of school to kind of just game plan and set kind of steps forward as to where we left off in the summer and what we're kind of moving forward towards. So out of that conversation came tomorrow and Thursday. He's going to be visiting with, he'll be a chancellor all day, working with all the teachers, 9 or 10 teachers that worked with him over the summer. Just getting into the classroom, co-teaching with them, working with them. What I handed out to you actually was a kind of, he talks about a bunch of principles that they kind of discussed and moving forward in the meantime for his next visit, so I just wanted to share that with you. And basically the culmination of the next 2 days will be Thursday afternoon, PD room in Chancellor. Hill will sit with myself and all the teachers that participated and kind of debrief what he saw, some noticings, things like that in the classes, and then where to move forward for an early October, the second Saturday, full Saturday meeting. So that just gives you the description of where we're at with Mr. Campbell. And I know we're working on an additional kind of full day option for probably all 3 buildings, I would assume, which we did last year, and it sparked this grant, so I'm very glad to see we're continuing to work with him. Some upcoming events. Life Touch to visit on October 1st for fall pictures. October 15th, we'll do our Title I AIS Parent Open House, and this year will be, I've reported on it in the past about the parent night that Wendy Brisley and myself and Young Rhinebeck have put together. We're actually going to fold that into the same evening. So we'll be doing that, like I said, on October 15th. 2 more things. Sit, Stay, Read is back. I believe this is the 4th year we've been doing it. This year we have one person, Diane Panessa, and her dog Oliver, that'll be working with, I believe it's every Thursday morning with Barb Olsett in the library. And it just creates kind of an environment, safe, non-judgmental environment for students to read to Oliver. And we pull, it's amazing how many kids we pull out of their shell as a result of these. We've had up to 3 dogs actually at a time in this program right now. It's just Oliver and Diane. But I'm glad we're doing it for a 4th year. So we actually at the end of this week, we'll have an idea of what the caseload is and start applying that. And then finally, on November 8th, also connected to our health and wellness curriculum, the Dutchess County Dental Society Players is presenting Happy Tooth, which is a dental health skit for students K-2. They've done a bunch of work in Red Hook. I was able to reach out to them and see how it went, talk to Larry, the gentleman who kind of runs it, so they'll be coming to do that for about a half hour and talk about dental hygiene with our youngest students. So that's what's happening.
Excellent, very good. You hit the ground running, certainly.
We did. It's a little bit earlier than normal, but.
Does anyone have any questions? Were you going to talk a little bit about AIS after this? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a handout for you, a lot of information, but I can kind of go through it with you guys. So the 2 pages, 3-pager actually. So what we did, what we'll be looking at are the first page is specific to ELA, the second page is specific to math, and then the third page just has some notes kind of that help explain where we're at and some expectations moving forward. So what you have here is K through 5, like for example the top, ELA, AIS students to be serviced this coming year. And what we did was we broke them up in a few kind of subgroups. Students that do not have IEPs that are serviced by AIS staff. Most of them, obviously those are the kids that come up with, as far as the state test is concerned, or 1s and 2s, things like that. But in addition, there's kind of other students that also get services through 504s, IEPs, things like that. So non-IEP students serviced by special ed staff is the second column. So we have AIS staff and then the special ed staff that's absorbing some of that for us as well. Then we have IEP students serviced by AIS staff, not a lot in that case. And then AIS students with IEP serviced by special ed staff. So that's kind of the way we took a look at it. And then students that we're monitoring. So the total number there is 96 students overall, for the most part, 1 through 1st grade through 5th grade. When you move down, I wanted to give you kind of an idea of where we were last year with the same, obviously the same categories. Now, you will notice we did do our best to service K and 1 with the RTI model and things like that, where also early intervention specifically, which used to be foundations, well, still is foundations. We used to do that as an AIS service, but if you remember 3 years ago, we brought that in K1, 2, and 3. So this is the 4th year we're doing it, so that now that level of early intervention has transferred into the classroom wholeheartedly. So that's one of the reasons you see some different numbers, K and 1. When you look at the final one, that final chart on the bottom, that's AIS eligible this year, and it's basically 4 and 5 because those are the bigger numbers we have. Students required for services by the original scores 1 and 2, and then where Campbell SED gave us their recalibrated statistical chart. So that's kind of about where we're at as far as the numbers are concerned for this year, and then what it looked like last year.
And K1, 2, and 3 aren't on that chart because they're not state tested.
Right. Well, 3rd is, but
Right.
But yeah,
They're in 4th this year.
right.
And could you also, because I know it'll come up when you go to the 2nd page and also with the other principals, what monitored students means?
Yeah. Monitored is, there are students that, so for example, what we started to do is we obviously looked at a lot more than just the test with those kind of numbers that you see on that bottom chart. It created a large number. So what we started doing is, in addition to, let's say you got a 1 or a 2 on the state test, which primarily mandates that you get AIS services. Part of the caveat of that is certainly, principals have the right, schools have the right to say, well, we're going to monitor certain students, because I guess somewhere in the law they're aware of the fact that that state test isn't the end-all and be-all, and there's some other pieces of information there. So, for example, what we did this year was we took a look at not only the state test, but we took a look at fundamental benchmark assessment, where students fall in that, which we do 2 to 3 times a year, depending on the grade. It's a running record, gives you an instructional level, and that's a kind of aligned with a specific grade. We looked at, in some cases, report card scores, all of last year grades and how that worked out. We interviewed certain teachers, got additional data that they may have had, notes, conference notes, things like that, but from when they had students from last year. So we kind of, and then of course the math information as well, which we got twice, 2 data points last year with each student when we started in February or March. So we took all that information and kind of took a look at it, and if a student really, we had to make some judgment calls and things like that. There were some students that were getting A's and B's across the board. They were right where they should have been, if not even further, with the fundamental benchmark assessment. They were above average for their grade and math assessments, and the only variable there that said, hey, they're failing was this 3-hour state test that they took at one point in May of last year, or April. So obviously for that we have a lot of information, so we started to pull back on a student being monitored rather than pulling them out for AIS. And what monitored means is, after we kind of take all that information, it means that this classroom teacher is just kind of keeping an extra eye on those students. And what we do is, what we're developing right now is a little more robust than we've had in the past. We haven't had absorbing the kids that we've monitored. We've had to do that to, we've obviously had to have a monitor list year by year, because, sometimes you almost always have some sort of AIS staff issue as far as servicing all those students, so you have to make those decisions. But this year, what we're going to do is quarterly, students will, Ms. Locks and myself will manage this. Quarterly teachers will get kind of a sheet that we're putting together that speaks specifically to all the little data points that we're able to accumulate in the classroom, observations, a lot of other stuff, that we'll give to teachers quarterly for each one of those students that they're monitoring, so that we can take a look at where they're at. And obviously, this kind of speaks to it. So skipping to the 3rd page, number 1 on the 3rd page reflects some of that. And I know it's a big range, but we're kind of trying to, it's a larger issue. So what it says is number of students serviced in 13-14 for all grades for math and ELA will likely rise as students are identified as needing AIS. So some of those monitoring kids, we will find out 1st quarter, 2nd quarter for, hey, they're falling behind a little bit. Let's try to put them in a group to give them a little additional support that supplements, doesn't supplant what they're getting in the classroom. So that we put a bit of an estimate there, especially for the 4th and 5th grade students, the ones that we're most, recently we'll be sending over to John and his staff. Anywhere from 25 to 60% of monitor students may require AIS services as the year progresses. So that's where those monitored kids come in. And that's basically, and we do the same thing for math. So math, we actually have even tighter, because every unit in everyday math has an assessment. So we have some real, these several weeks we have some information there. And then obviously we have math data for math as well. We take a look at all of the report card grades quarterly for last year, and that's how we kind of deal with math in a very similar way. Now, another thing I just wanted to mention, you may notice sizes and things like that from last year as well. Number 2, numbers for 2012-13 reflect the total number of students serviced during the year, including students who exited and entered, so in and out. So that's kind of an important point, because what that did was it counted them all as once, at the end of the year, which is why we have a kind of a higher number. We obviously didn't start with that number last year, but that's about where we got to. So I just wanted to put those 2 little caveats in there. And then the 2nd page is identically the same as far as the setup as the ELA. So what I just gave you kind of a handwritten total in there for the total amount for this coming year. You can see the numbers aren't quite as large. So that kind of just paints a picture for you as far as where we're at, some of the needs we may have moving forward.
Brett, I have a question. So the last chart on page 1 says that 25 students, for example, in grade 4 are required to have AIS services, right?
In ELA.
In the LA on the first page.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so then I would think that the first chart under grade 4 would total 25 before even the monitored students.
I'm sorry, you lost me. Say that again? I apologize.
So the last chart says 25 students are eligible in grade 4, are actually required to have AIS
Right after the
services.
recalibration, right, yeah.
So then I would expect that in the top chart on the same page, under grade 4, the total number of students serviced by AIS, getting AIS services, not exclusive of the monitored students, would equal 25.
That's true.
But it equals 13.
It equals 28. Well, no,
Well-
you're right. You're right. 13. Yep,
And the same for grade 5.
that's true, so I'll have to go back and take a look.
Yeah. If you were able to just update that in
Yeah,
a way that
absolutely.
is consistent, that way we could just have a handle on, I mean, it looks like ultimately if the total is 96 in ELA and last year the total was 88, it's not a dramatic change from one year.
Right. The big difference, by the way, is last year our groups got up to almost 10 kids, which is very large for an AIS group. We usually try to keep it 6 to 8, 8 at the most. Last year, we made it slightly larger, plus those 2 AIS teachers. Ms. Locks actually has created some levity in some of that space because those other 2 teachers were also taking care of AIS, so I had to the AIS teachers, so I had to free them up to be able to do a lot of the legwork that goes with putting information into RTIM, the management system, things like that. So, but those groups were much larger and definitely not optimal. We also had we also had slightly more special ed teachers as far as picking up some of that slack in AIS.
So wouldn't you anticipate the same thing this year then?
Yeah, it's possible, yeah.
So we have, I
I'm
mean, just the
worried-
class sizes for AIS classes, right, are supposed to be a little smaller, that's the sort of
That
model,
would be the hope, yeah.
but they're bigger than we'd like.
Yeah, and also, we're also pulling, one of the things we've also had to get rid of over the last couple of years as well is writing AIS, which is really imperative in grades 3, 4, 5. And unfortunately, like 3 years ago, we stopped doing those groups because we just had, more kids trying in an attempt to keep those classes small. And, we'd love to get back to targeted writing support as a push in 3, 4, 5 as an AIS, which is what we did in the past, and I think it was helpful. So that's another thing we're kind of missing. And as far as math is concerned, right now, technically, I basically have a part-time math person in Bill Worrell covering. Luckily, we don't have the numbers we have. And in those cases, in some small areas, we have some special ed teachers absorbing that as well. We also had 2 CTT environments which changed this year. So those special ed teachers were kind of connected to those classes more than they are if they're an inclusive environment, kind of bouncing back.
You have to explain what that means. We have 2 board members around the table. The CTT.
Collaborative team teaching environment. So it's very close to inclusion, but what it really does is it ties, like teacher of record, for example, for the entire class are 2 teachers that team teach together, rather than, so like for example, Bill Morrissey is actually working as support in 2 inclusion classes this year between 4th and 5th grade, primarily in 4th, but also taking over a group in 5th. We wouldn't do that if he was a CTT special ed teacher, because they basically work in the same classroom all day. There's no kind of sharing, and they team teach. Whereas an inclusion model, the general ed teacher is primarily the lead teacher. Not that they don't switch back and forth. We have some great teams in those environments, but that's just kind of the textbook definition of what that means. So, and we had a good amount. With the 3rd grade, we had that class could also be slightly larger as a result. So it was a perfect group of kids that were able to. For example, in 3rd grade last year, that were very good candidates as a group to become a CTT environment, which you historically think 60-40 split, general ed, special ed. And we only had 3 sections, so just that number really worked out perfectly. We did something a little different with that same cohort of kids this year, but that's what it is. We had one in 2nd grade and 3rd grade last year.
Does anyone have any questions for Brett on this?
So I can update that, I do apologize about that
Yeah.
discrepancy, but Fern and I'll sit down
Right.
tomorrow. And
Have you had any parents contact you about the scores or concerns about?
One, actually, but I know that I've heard drips and drabs that there's been a few teachers that were
Direct, right.
asked directly. I had one parent who just needed me to walk her through what that meant, especially since the reports that went home were untouched as far as the calibration was concerned. So it was like the raw score, this is where you were. So, but no, that's about it. I have had more conversation, more parents that have approached me about like the opt-out conversation, even around MAP testing, which we're currently doing now. But not so much about the scores, just that one parent, and then a few teachers that said they got similar questions, which is why we thought it was important to kind of share those links on Engage with families, because it's just an easy way to understand.
Okay.
What's all about.
So no other questions? Thanks for preparing this.
No problem.
I appreciate that. And also as well, thank you for the handout about Rick Campbell's work.
Yeah, shoot me an email if you have any questions. I know it's long to read.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's been an awesome collaboration, and it's only the beginning of it. So I'm looking forward to Thursday afternoon.
Yeah, that's encouraging. Thank you so much.
You got it.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm actually going to go against everything they teach you in Teacher 101, and I'm going to provide you with my handout in advance. I know that means that many of you won't listen to what I'm saying. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it'll give you a chance.
It's a strategy.
Take a look at the numbers before we talk a little bit about AIS, because there's a lot of information in there. So in terms of just general news about BMS as we start the school year, thanks to Sheldon Teeter and the O&M crew, we had a very smooth opening to the school year. They were, in addition to all of the cleaning that they typically do and all of the tasks that they do over the summer, we had a lot of additional work done in our building, a lot of painting, a lot of sprucing up that does not typically get done during the school year. So we're very pleased about that. We had a very smooth start to the school year. BMS welcomed 284 students through our doors this fall. I believe that's 2 more students than we welcomed last year. We had about a dozen students that were either returning to the district, having been here at Chancellor formally, or were new to the district, in many cases new to the state. And when we get back, we talk a little bit about the discrepancy in some of the numbers before you. I'll explain where that impacted some of my percentages. All of our transition activities took place again this year. We had 6th grade Walk Your Schedule night, thanks to Carmela Fountain, who always organizes that evening. We had, I think, all but a dozen students attend. We did hold it a week prior to the start of the school year. We've held it as soon as the evening before the start of the school year, and that was a little too intimidating for some parents. But despite the fact that we had students on vacation, we had all but 12 students attend that evening. Again, we held a new student orientation. All of our new students, I think for the first time in my 9 years, all of our new students and their families attended that presentation. We broke them up again, thanks to Meg Rodier and the Peer Leadership Club. They took all of the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade incoming students off to other parts of the building and did kind of community building and get to know you activities with them, gave them tours of the building, talked a little bit about student life at BMS, while Meg Rodier and Carmela Fountain and myself had an opportunity to meet and speak with the parents and answer questions that they had. Once again, our 6th grade teachers met with all of their students and held on to them for the day, rather than allowing them to transition from class to class. They do attend special classes on that first day. However, they remain with their home-based teacher. You know that a couple of years ago, in lieu of being able to come up with an activity period time, we extended one period in our day slightly. It became our home base. It gives our 6th grade students in particular, although we do it in 7th and 8th grade too, an opportunity to connect with one individual. So all of our 6th graders stayed with their home-based teacher on that first day, did a lot of community building activities, kind of steeped in our developmental design training as well as organizational types of things like, being able to open their lockers and organizing all of their binders and that sort of thing. Once again, we got a lot of real positive feedback from our sixth grade parents. We did have our open house just this past Thursday, and as I said, we had a lot of positive feedback. We created 200 folders, I think, for parents that evening, and I think I had 2 at the end of the night. So
Wow.
our attendance for that evening was very positive as well. As Brett said, again, in my 9 years here, I think we had more summer curriculum work and truly meaningful summer curriculum work done by our teachers. Our ELA department, I think all 4 of my ELA teachers spent no less than 50 hours this summer on curriculum work as we are looking to pilot and roll out the state-approved curriculum, the Expeditionary Learning Module 1. We're working with Brian Green, our literacy consultant, to really assess its efficacy as we progress through the teaching of the module, which will probably take us into the beginning of December, and then looking ahead to Module 2 and rolling that out following that. Our math teachers did much work aligning with the Common Core learning modules. As you know, we're piloting a textbook, and we reconfigured the way our accelerated math program is taught slightly in 6th and 7th grade. The introduction of the Common Core really identified some gaps in what the Common Core and what the state calls foundational skills. So we are now piloting a new program and a new textbook that has a lot of software and parent and home support along with it. So we're excited about that. I've heard good reviews early on. Our social studies and science teachers, again, worked on the integration of the CCLS shifts into their curriculum in preparation for the PARCC exams that will begin next year. And all of our special area teachers worked a lot on pre and post assessment, particularly in the case of some of our smaller departments in the district, art, music, health, phys ed. They really work together to start to, or to look to, continue to look to align their curriculum K-12. Just a positive note, and you'll recall that 2 years ago we spent quite a bit of time and energy in BMS partnering with Dr. Patricia Wright and working with some of her graduate students from Stony Brook on her work in Madagascar. Last year, for any number of reasons, that work took a hiatus. We had raised a substantial amount of money 2 years ago to help Dr. Wright and her foundation with her work, and just last week we submitted a check to the foundation for just under $3,000. Obviously, we've gotten in touch with all of the players on their end at Stony Brook, with Dr. Wright, with a number of her graduate students or former graduate students that are now working in Madagascar, and we're looking forward to starting up that relationship again and bringing them up here relatively soon. That's in the works as we speak. All of our extracurricular clubs are up and running. As you know, we were fortunate enough to be able to hold a little bit of money aside for some additional offerings at the middle school level. Right now, I have proposals for a technology club, a wind ensemble, an anthropology club, which, as we've talked in the past, is going to work on some of this integration in the curriculum with Madagascar, as well as a junior chapter of the Rhinebeck Historical Society. Mr. Frischkind is working on that. And finally, the choir club. And I'm taking proposals right now from teachers and potential advisors. And very excited about being able to offer these additional extracurricular activities to our students. And just finally, in terms of upcoming events, we've done a lot of work early on. Plans are underway for our collaboration with Bard College on the Day of Science. We're going to participate in that again this year. Our Veterans Day Assembly is in the works. Our 6th grade circus is coming up. in just about a short month. We're working with members of the Rhinebeck Science Foundation. The Discovery Festival will come up on November 16th, and they have some interesting ideas and some exciting changes for middle school students in terms of running some contests. So they're looking to partner with our science teachers and with Brian McDonald, our technology teacher, and we look forward to that. Those are some of the things happening in Buckland Middle School. So in terms of the AIS numbers, I provided you with 4 tables. The table on the front page is simply the number of students that would require AIS services based on having fallen below the cut point, the proficiency cut point, originally set by the state. The set of numbers on their right are the number of students requiring services under the new SED cut points. You'll see that in some cases it's nearly half. In some cases it is half or more than half. I will tell you, embedded in those numbers in terms of where 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s fell, for example, the new cut point in 6th grade math not only eliminated all students receiving 2s from falling below that proficiency cut point, but also eliminated 4 students that received 1s. So with the new cut point, went from a 1 to a 3. Don't ask me how the state figured that out. So those are the 2 numbers on the first page. Second page, at the top, you'll have our AIS enrollment from last year. I did not include percentages where we had approximately a cohort of 100 students. All of those numbers are just about what they are. 17 students is 17%, give or take half a percentage point. AIS placement midsummer, that table in the middle, those are based on our original assessment scores. We hold AIS meetings with all of our grade level ELA and math teachers, as well as our AIS providers at the end of every school year. We put a lot of stock in teacher recommendation and those teachers that truly know our students. As Brett said, we incorporate any number of other assessments, classroom data, Fontes and Pinel scores, the MAP data from last spring. So we certainly do not use the state assessment as the be-all and end-all of our AIS placements. As you can see in that middle table, the numbers would be quite high were we to place students in AIS either in class or as a monitored student based on the initial cut scores. Our intent in my conversations with Mark Berg and with Carmela Fountain, our intent was to stick particularly in 7th and 8th grade where we truly knew the students because we had them in 6th and 7th grade, with the original recommendations and to add the state assessment scores as another piece of data, but not the sole piece of data. We had a little less information with our students coming from 5th grade into 6th grade. We're looking at folders and looking at numbers, and we don't have as much of that human element on our incoming students, so our placement numbers there were a little bit more conservative. If you look at the bottom chart, the bottom table, you'll see what our current AIS enrollment numbers are. The total enrollment, you'll note that the total enrollment numbers in this table are different from the total enrollment numbers on the table on the front page. And that's because we have a number of students that are placed in AIS service at the request of teachers, at the request of parents, in some, but very few cases, at the request of students that did receive 3s on the state assessment. So you'll note that almost across the board, we are servicing more students in AIS class or as a monitored student than we're required to based on the new SED cut point. Any questions?
have a question about the class sizes. So how is it impacting
Our
the
class
size of
sizes-
each AIS class?
Our class sizes are larger than they were last year, except in few cases, they're not maxed out. One of the reasons why, and Brett explained a little bit about monitoring service and just being able to keep a close eye on students. We have a number that are officially being monitored. We also monitor all students for at-risk behavior through our RTI, formerly our CST process. So in all but I think seventh grade math, we are not maxed out. And we wouldn't even be in seventh grade math, but our class sizes are getting larger than they were in the past. They average around 7 and 8 students. A couple of classes have 9 students, whereas in the past, we've tried to keep 4, 5, 6. But we do have some slots available for those students that are identified through the monitoring service as needing more assistance.
And when you said the state removed a few kids who had received a 1 from needing AIS, am I missing some nuance here? I mean, are there deeper numbers than a 1, 2, 3, 4 that make that determination
they're based
happen,
on
or do you really
scaled-
just have no idea how
They're
that
based on
happens?
scaled score cut points.
So it's in relationship to the rest of the state?
Yes. Yes. In relation, and I'm not going to be able to explain the statistics of it. But what they tried to do, because obviously this was a new exam and they were setting that bar even higher than the exam measured last year, they were trying to come up with a measure that was equitable to where students would have fallen had they taken this exam last year, or had this exam and last year's exam been comparable.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Have you heard from parents at all about, or teachers or could
Only
be
a
getting
couple.
directed?
We've had, again, when we got the new set of cut points and we realized that we do have a number of students that receive 3s that are in AIS classes, some of those parents were contacted and they were given an option. Particularly, and I don't believe it was more than one case, but we knew of one student who was unable to participate in band or chorus based on their placement in AIS. So we called that parent and gave them an option of just being placed on monitoring so that they'd be able to participate in band
great.
and chorus. But no more than a handful of phone calls.
Okay. Well, thank you, John. Thank you for preparing this. And also, with all this work around the Common Core and new APPR and what have you, it's nice, and as well for Brett, to see, the focus on welcoming the new kids and the 6th graders into the school and getting Madagascar project up and running again. I know, there are a lot of demands on all your time, so committing, to those still core values that we have is really noted and important, so thank you.
Well, I'm going to follow John's lead. I'm going to hand out my handout.
Does it work for him? Does it work for him?
Hello. At the high school, we welcome 371 students back to school, 95 freshmen, 104 sophomores, 81 juniors, and 91 seniors. We had 14 new registrants this year, and we had 10 students who left our high school. 6 of those students, their families have moved out of the district. 4 students went to private schools. One is actually 3 private, 1 home instruction. I want to echo what John and Brett mentioned. Thanks to the work of our summer staff, our custodial staff, our kitchen. School opened up very smoothly. The building was great. I know you noted that as you toured not too long ago. But it helps set a great climate when the floors are gleaming and the surfaces are spotless. It was a very smooth opening. Once again, Mr. Berg organized a new student and a freshman class orientation, a freshman walkthrough. About over half of our freshmen participated. They had the opportunity to tour the building, find their lockers, test out their locks, make sure everything works, connect with some friends. For the second year, we were able to rely upon our peer mentors in our peer mentoring club to help our freshmen orient themselves. So they participated during the freshman walkthrough. We had 10 students who were nominated by faculty, received training from Mrs. Rode over the summer. She's the peer mentoring advisor. And now we have a total of 33 peer mentors in the high school. They are, to begin, they will help new students to the district acclimate. They'll also work with first-year students. They'll also work, we've had them work last year with students who are at risk, either academically or are manifesting some adjustment issues. And we're going to continue to explore the ways that the Peer Mentoring Club can help us maintain and support a positive climate. On the first day, I met with all of our grade levels, first 4 periods. They received their student handbooks and codes of conduct. We took some time to go through again the Dignity Act, or the relevant portions for student life. As you know, this is the second year in which the Dignity Act is in effect. So we wanted to make sure all of our students were aware of its provisions, and we'll all work together with us to, again, maintain a positive climate. This is not news to you, but I want to take the opportunity to mention that we welcomed 3 new faculty: Laura Natalie in our music department, Justin Randall in our math department, Gideon Moore as a part-time teacher in our social studies department, and Stacy Vandenthorn joined us in the main office. The BLP team met last week. We're going to begin our work this year by reviewing the results from our freshman exit survey that was administered last spring, and use that to help us plan some objectives for this year. I have some student accolades already that I'd like to share with you. One of our music students was selected to perform at the NYSSMA All-State Festival in Rochester in November. One of our students won a National Hispanic Recognition Program Scholar Award. We have 1 National Merit semifinalist, and 37 of our students were listed as AP scholars as a result of the AP administrations back in May. As of today, we had visits from admissions representatives from 22 colleges. They come in and visit and speak with our kids in college and careers classes, and they're also available in the guidance office for students who may wish to chat with them in a little more detail. We held our student council elections last Friday for the second year. Rather than videotape the speeches and then play them in social studies classes, we went live. So we had live speeches in front of live audiences, and I want to commend all of the student participants. The audiences were respectful and enthusiastic. The quality of the speeches from our student council candidates and from our class officer candidates was excellent, so it was a really great experience, and it was nice to sit in the back of the auditorium and just watch them go to work with Mrs. Hackett as the advisor. I too, along with John and Brett, have some curriculum updates. I want to commend our math department. We spent a lot of time gearing up for the new math curriculum at 9th grade this year. As you know, 9th grade students will take the Algebra 1 curriculum, which is based on the Common Core learning standards. Those students, most of those 9th graders, will take the Common Core Regents exam June 3rd of this year. So it was a lot of work to prepare the curriculum and make sure that our students and our faculty will be ready to meet that challenge in June. In addition, our English department worked on aligning the 9th and 10th grade curriculum with the Common Core. We also had curriculum work that took place in our new courses, Introduction to Engineering Design and Introduction to Psychology. I'm pleased to report that Introduction to Engineering Design has 28 students enrolled in its class. That's at capacity, and that course is running first period. Introduction to Psychology has a robust enrollment of 15 students, and that class runs 9th period. So all indications are at this point, as I chat with students, is that they're enjoying the classes and that they both fulfilled a need in our program of studies. Started to talk a little bit about scheduling, so I'll segue to AIS in the high school. And I want to begin by emphasizing that I shared with you only the AIS placements for our incoming 9th graders. As you know, we have AIS services for students in 10th grade English, a little bit in 11th grade English, Also AIS in social studies for 10th and 11th grade. We have AIS for 9th graders in sciences if they're, based on teacher recommendations and their performance, the thinking is they might need some support in science. But here I shared with you only the results of the state tests and the impact that it had on our 9th grade program. So if we look in the, let's see, right about in the middle, 2013 below proficient scores. A couple weeks before we sent schedules out, we received the 8th grade scores from the state. And as you can see, about 40% of our students scored below a 3 in both ELA and in mathematics. Typically, the standard practice is that any student who scores below a 3 qualifies for academic intervention services. So at that time, we looked at the student schedules, and we were able to schedule about all of those students into an AIS section. The rationale for scheduling all of those students was to ensure that the schedule could accommodate them, and also to make sure that we had the staffing that we needed to provide AIS for those students. If you look in the bold to the right of the 2013 column, you can see that about half of the students who qualified under the original state cut points were enrolled in AIS, and about half of them are in monitoring. Typically, students are placed in monitoring. This occurs because there's either a student conference with a guidance counselor or me, or the parent contacts me or the guidance counselor and requests whether we can put the student in monitoring so that the student can, in most respects, be more in charge of their own learning and make their own adjustments to be successful in ELA and in math. And in almost all circumstances, when we receive that request, we accommodate it. We want to work with the parents and the students, and we don't want AIS to seem like a penalty. So we place the students on monitoring. To go a little bit further on the bird walk, in the high school, monitoring at the foundational level takes the shape of a child study team review of student progress every 5 weeks. As Mr. Campbell mentioned, given the size of our school, we monitor all students' progress, but every 5 weeks, we'll start by looking at the students who are monitoring for AIS. And if there's a reason for concern that the child study team notices, the guidance counselor or my office will contact the parent, and we'll begin a conversation about what we're noticing and what some options may be that we want to put in place. It's not an automatic placement in an AIS class. There could be other interventions that we take in the high school, for example, peer mentoring, or maybe there are some adjustment difficulties and some counseling with our school social worker or counselor would be of assistance. So the bottom line is we have we have 17 in ELA, 16 in math, about that same number in monitoring for the 9th grade year. The bottom line is, if you look to the left of 2013, at the end of year placements in ELA and the end of year placements in math, is that we were able to accommodate all the students who qualified for AIS under the original cut score. Because we found that over the year, students are referred by teachers, referred by parents, and by the end of the year, we have a number of students participating in AIS classes. So we were set up to accommodate that number. In math, thanks to hiring a full-time mathematics teacher, who also has agreed to teach AIS sections in lieu of a duty, we'll be able to accommodate all of the students in math who were below a level 3 based on the original state assessment. I want to take a moment to look at the revised cut score, and I'll resist the temptation to editorialize, but I'll have you note that when the state provided us with revised cut scores, the number of students deemed not proficient, cut almost in half in ELA and almost a third in mathematics. Now, of those students, just as you can see, almost all of them, 2/3 of both those students receive AIS services, and the remainder are in monitoring. I'm not a statistician. I don't know how students can go from being proficient, or being not less than proficient, and then several weeks later the state indicates that they're, well, you don't have to give them AIS now, they're proficient. And when I think about our math students, as I mentioned, the majority of the ninth graders will be taking a Common Core Regents exam in mathematics in June. I don't think it's acceptable to not give them every support that we can to prepare them for that very challenging exam. So I'll get off my soapbox at this point. So that's AIS in the high school. Again, the bottom line is that we will be able to, as we predict and anticipate, to accommodate all the students who may require AIS based on the original cut scores that we received in early August.
Thank you. Any questions? Dan?
A couple of questions on a few different topics. Thank you. It was a very good overview. I share your concerns about particularly math. If you aren't proficient one week and you are the next, how it's concerning because math builds on each other itself from year to year. Going back to the high school electives.
Yes.
We spent a lot of time last year talking about electives.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see that they're up and running and popular. Did it have any impact on the number of students taking study halls or coming in late or leaving early?
I haven't completed a study of the study halls, but in terms of late arrival and early dismissal, it did drastically in late arrival.
Great.
We have probably a half fewer students arriving late compared to last year.
Excellent.
Not as much as I wanted to see. Maybe a difference of 5 or 6 between
Okay.
students who have early dismissal. But it definitely had an impact on late arrival. And I'm still working with the guidance department to generate a matrix of study hall usage during the day.
Okay, great. So just to elaborate on our conversation last year, one of our philosophies was if you offer students more of what they want, they'll voluntarily be in school more rather than mandating. So it's good to have some follow-up on that. And referring to the 14 new students in the district and 10 left, can you elaborate where those students came from? Are they coming back from private schools? Are they new families moving into the district?
It's a mix, a handful, a couple, 3 returning to the district, others who are new families.
Okay. And then the 10 that left, is that on top of other students who have left in past years? I'm just sort of asking in terms of class sizes and planning our school, how many students are out there going to other schools that could be coming here?
Oh, yeah,
So
that's in addition to
last year's numbers,
Yes.
whoever, okay. Great.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, and I appreciate as well, as Diane pointed out, the addition of the new classes, and then also, John, you mentioned the clubs, the proposal for clubs. I mean, it's nice for us to see that when you come to us with budget requests, we ask you to think for new things that would enhance your programs, and to see them in action and good response from teachers and students is great. And thank you for your planning to make that happen. So thanks for all your reports, and we look forward to a great year and more of it. Thank you.
Before these gentlemen leave, not that they already haven't had a long day up to this point, I just want to make sure that if there are any questions for any of them relative to anything that may be on the agenda for later, that we ask them while they're here, because once they leave, I mean, I could ask them to stay here until 10:30, 11 o'clock, but I like to maintain a good relationship with my administrators, so I won't do that. I mean, if there are no questions, that's fine, but once they leave, they're on their way home to
Oh, I have a sort of general question that really could be answered by all or any of you, which is when the revised cut points came out, had communication already taken place with families about the AIS placements? Or did you have to recontact and say the points are different now, these are our options?
No, I don't think so. I think we got it early enough.
Okay.
Well, schedule in the high school, middle school, schedules had gone out.
Okay, so there were revisions that had to take place in consultation with families, with parents, okay.
Laura, did you have a question?
I did, actually, it was for Brett. Later on, we're voting on some before-school enrichment programs. You have one in there for the CLS beautification project?
That is Fawn Johnson, again. She's done it the past couple of years. When we were interviewing for an art teacher, you know, one of the things I was kind of looking for was someone who would look at the building as kind of a, you know, an empty canvas, blank. You know, tan walls make me a little crazy. So that was just part of the conversation with the final candidates and things, and kind of an expectation that I was hoping for. And she was obviously someone who already wanted to do that. So what we did was, that could take different forms moving forward. Right now, you may notice when I think downstairs is finished at this point, you may notice there's kind of a wood panel underneath each big window of the classrooms. So if you walk down both hallways up and down, there's this panel. So what we did was downstairs, and I believe we completed it last year, but it was the second year we did it. We chose specific artists, different artists, and kind of copied their style or specific painting. The students, the 5th grade students primarily, I think we opened it to 5th, or 4th and 5th. Basically painted a really nice image. As we went down, we chose different artists. Upstairs, because of the curriculum for 4th and 5th grade, it's more cultures, communities, things like that. So we're utilizing this nice wood panel that's there to kind of create some original artwork. Copied, I guess.
Interpret it.
Original copies.
Yeah. And we give them credit, certainly, that the students signed it as well. So it was also another way to kind of get outgoing students to really kind of put their name in the building. And one of the things I mentioned that it'll look different. We'll probably finish that this year. I'd love to have a conversation with her, possibly in the spring, to look at those walls and the 2 stairwells. Those are huge, and they're just blank. So that's kind of what it is. It's just her and I sitting together thinking about some really good projects.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. It's been a long day, so thanks for being here. All right, we move on now to board committee reports, of which we have a few in our packets. Lisa Rosenthal's not here. She did some of those reports, so we'll see who can fill in on those. We'll start with, well, there were minutes that were from July 23rd meeting. So I don't know that we have to go through that.
We've already acted on A and B
Yeah,
from...
so I don't think there's anything unless Margaret Diane wants to add anything. No? Okay.
And we haven't met since then either. We're meeting this Thursday, I think, so.
Okay, thank you. Laura, do you want to just give a brief overview? You don't have to go through everything.
Okay.
For the communications committee.
Sure. Well, we spent the first part of our meeting getting Deirdre and I up to speed. It was our very first committee meeting. So how it all worked and what we're going to try to do for the year. And the biggest chunk of what we talked about was the Director of Technology and Communications, and trying to work on defining some of the goals for that position and what that means in terms of things being removed from Joe's voluminous workload. We also talked a lot about giving this person time for evaluation and time in the classroom so that they can really see what's being done now and how we can better implement some of the SELT recommendations going forward. We talked about the website and are wondering if the platform of School World is still appropriate for our uses. It was about 5 or 6 years ago that we implemented it, and maybe it's time for a change. There are new versions or something that would better serve our needs and in terms of communicating out to our parents. We talked about, the difference between emergency notification versus just general information, and we wanted to be really careful about what venues we use to try to get the message out to parents, so that parents really understand that this is something I have to pay attention to as opposed to another notification about an event this weekend. So we do want to every 3 to 6 months, send an email out to our list, asking parents to just check their email notifications, information, their phone numbers, all of that. If anything's changed, they can update it. It's a nice reminder for them in case you need to use it for emergencies. And then just, continuing discussions of how we can have more proactive and dynamic communications with our community and principals and teachers.
Great.
Yeah,
Sounds like a good start.
yeah.
Any questions for communications? I did remember when I was reading this, Lisa had done a draft of FAQs for communicating, and I'm not sure how it got in her lap. Was she on the communications committee or whatever?
It's actually in the policy committee.
So it is in the policy committee?
Yes, it's on our agenda for this Thursday. And the reason it's with the policy committee is because it spun out of those 3 or 4 concerns, policies that the policy committee suggested revisions last year and were approved by the board, and the request was made that there be a follow-up, kind of a down and dirty explanation of how this works in the real
Right.
world. That spawned the FAQs, and the last time I think they were presented, there was some questions that kind of sent us back to revise those.
Right.
So, again, that happened towards the end of the year.
Sure.
This committee, the policy committee is on the verge of taking them up again, but they haven't yet.
You might want to consider the policy committee, because the policy committee has a big agenda, one of which is to review every single policy. So it might be a conversation to think about. Maybe Lisa did a draft and
Punt it over to
punt it over to communications to take it from there.
Yeah.
Seems like it might make sense, so. All right, any other questions for communications? Thank you, Laura. All right, the next committee meeting was finance. Lisa did those minutes, but she's not here, so you can see our agenda reviewed the budget calendar, reviewed the anticipated impact of the tax levy cap. That was a work in progress. The state doesn't make that final determination until January. Possible bidding of transportation contract, point of sale program, accounting software, and basic STAR registration, which I appreciate that the district has been trying to communicate the necessity to do that for all homeowners. So we went through a lot, and we set our agenda for the next meeting. A lot of these issues will come up. We were discussing the budget calendar tonight. But does anyone have any questions about these? They'll probably intersect with a lot of these issues as the year progresses. Okay, we'll move on. I did the minutes for the personnel committee meeting, where we also discussed the director of technology and communication. And as noted in these minutes, the board has had an inconsistent practice in relation to participation in hires of administrators. So a board representative has been on committees, hiring committees for building principals, but we did not send a representative to a hiring committee for the director of special education. Now we have this new position, and we had some dialogue about whether it made sense to have a board representative on the hiring committee or not, and that we should have a consistent practice. So we thought we'd open it up to see if anyone here has any strong opinions. We could see the down and upside of either one, not least of which is our board member able to do that all the time? Is just a practical question since we are volunteers, but I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that.
I don't actually see a downside other than the time, but we don't hire administrators every week, so I think it's important that somebody from the board is part of that final group of interviews and that kind of thing. I think it sends a nice message that the Board of Ed actually is a, active partner with the administration.
And I think that's, that word is important too, that it's a partnership. I know, I'm not sure if anyone else around here as a board member has served on a hiring committee. I did serve on a couple of the principals hiring committees, and, it's not to say yay or nay at that level, but rather to participate with the group and represent the board's interests and our conversations and our perspective in a hire. So being a part of that shared decision-making.
I think it also helps to build some support when the decision comes back to the full
Right.
board, because there's an insider presence on that committee. So I think in terms of communicating back to the full board, there's a positive there within that context of being a member of that team. So, and certainly the follow-up question is one that you mentioned. It is typically a not insignificant time commitment. So if we're, and this is kind of the last, for me, this is the last piece of pulling this committee together. If a board member is going to serve, then I would need to know as soon as possible who would do that, who has the time, and it's really a flexibility of time. I couldn't sit here today or probably even next week and say, this committee is going to meet at these times on these days, because we meet when the consensus of the entire group says that they're available to meet. So I'm certainly supportive of having a board member serve in that role. I would want to know, if not tonight, and I won't put anybody under that kind of pressure, but I would certainly like to know within the next day or two, if that's possible, that someone is interested in, yes, it appears that they have a reasonably flexible schedule, then I'll put you in that mix with some of the community members who've already indicated towards the end of the school year that they have an interest, and a number of members of the staff who indicated at the end of the school year that they have an interest as well, and then want to get going on this one. So it's kind of the last building block. And if the decision is no one's interested or no one's available, then we'll move forward without that person. But one way or the other, we've got to move this forward. So if there's an interest and people want to see me, after the meeting, or throw me an email or give me a call within the next day or so. And we really probably would want to limit it to one person. I don't think we want to stack the deck, as it were, or have the perception that we're doing that. So we really only need one person with maximum flexibility and tolerance for ambiguity to participate in that process. So let me know if you're interested, okay? That's my motto.
Okay.
So,
Okay, yeah. So anyone else
That'd
have
be
any
great.
comments about that?
I think it's a great idea insofar as it is actually part of one of our goals as a board that we're interested in supporting moving forward on this initiative. So I think in terms of communicating back into our work as a group, it would be really helpful.
Okay, well then we'll move
So let me
forward
know.
in that way and sort of share that communication with
Great.
Joe over who can be available. Great, thanks for your feedback. And then we discussed as well preparations for the RTA and Annie contract negotiations and a couple of other smaller items related to the administrator's contract and some new software that might enhance the capability of the guidance office to do recommendations electronically. Any questions on any other topics? Okay, great, thank you. We'll skip, Lisa's gonna report on her meeting, being an ex officio member of the Rhinebeck Science Foundation Board, but we'll just delay that since she's not here. Great, yeah.
I can just mention that the audit committee did meet today, and we reviewed the food audits, which was in draft form with the auditors. So that conversation occurs in executive session, but it was a very productive conversation, and the follow-up will be in finance. with short-term and long-term goals. So it was a successful meeting. It was great.
Great, thank you. All right, thanks, everyone. We'll move on now to comments. Good news. Does anyone have any good news?
I have some good news. I wanted to make the board aware, I know you guys voted to throw some additional funds to some of our booster clubs in the high school athletic department. And I just wanted to give a plug for the Rhinebeck varsity girls swim team. Though statistically, it's impossible for them to win a meet ever because there are only 7 girls. In last week's meet, they took 6 of 9 first places, 4 of 9 second places, and 2 of 9 third places. So they're doing a really great job.
That's
Doing
great.
And a bunch of them have already qualified for sectionals. And we have a couple more weeks to go.
So there's, in these kind of sports, there's a team outcome, which because there aren't enough of them, they can't win, but
enough
you
points.
can get, there is a way to succeed individually to move on
Yes.
through the season, okay?
That's right. So
Great.
if you make a particular time, you can go on to the next level.
It's not dissimilar to track or to cross-country as well.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing that. That
Very
is,
exciting.
and it is great that we've been able to support budgetarily more kids doing the kind of thing they want to do after school. One more example of that, so thank you. Any other good news? Well, I think the opening of school going very well, and all that the principals report is excellent news, so that's always a good thing. All right, we move on now to old business. Do we have any old business?
Yeah, the only thing I have for under old business is a follow-up on the discussion at the Communications Committee in the last board meeting, which is breakfast with the board. And it looks like October 18th is going to be the best near-term date for most people. Just wanted to run that past you in case all of a sudden 5 of you had your schedules fill up early morning on Friday the 18th. If not, that's when we will do it. I'll be getting out a save the date to the staff within the next couple of days, and then follow up with a reminder and put Tom in the kitchen getting breakfast ready. And
Good at that.
yeah, real good. And on that topic, we're having kale on Thursday in the cafeteria. So it's kale day at the Rhinebeck Central School
Fantastic.
District cafeteria. So be there or be without kale.
Excellent. I thought you were going to say we were going to get like kale muffins.
Yeah, that could be the next big thing.
This Wednesday.
So mark
Okay,
your
so the
calendars for
18th?
the
Thank you.
18th. yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you for organizing
Yep.
that, Joe. Next, we have another opportunity for public comment. Would any member of the public like to make a comment? All right, then we'll move on. Other. Does anyone have any other items? All right, then we move on to our action items. Does anyone have anything they want to pull from the consent agenda? Okay, then may I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Diane. All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion to approve the Board of Education's goals for the district for the 2013-14 school year?
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Diane. Oh, well, I saw Diane Lyons first, so we're gonna get this cleared up though before Donna takes over. I promise, Donna. All right, so we have those in our packets. Joe, thank you for making your the revisions and your assistance helping to develop that. Anyone, any questions or comment on that motion?
I actually have just a question. So we have 2 versions of the goals, am I correct? We have sort of the version with all the specifics, and we have this,
Strategies.
right, exactly.
We have the version with just the goals, then we
Right.
have the version with the goals followed by supporting strategies to help meet the goals.
Right.
And then we have a third page, actually a fourth page, but a third section with goals to be considered by
Right.
some of our
Okay.
committees.
So, and in voting on this, then we're voting to endorse all of this that we've generated for this year.
Well, I guess, if you're asking me my opinion, I would say that a vote on the goals adopts that first page. Those are the goals. However, we've discussed and agreed that the strategies that are included will support our, both as a board and by extension as administrators in meeting the goals, but we're not, in my opinion, you're proving the goals. The strategies may be somewhat more fluid because you get into the
Yeah.
goals and find out that there are other strategies
Right.
that make more sense, or that some of these strategies don't necessarily support the goals. So I would suggest focusing on the 4 goals. That's just my suggestion. There's no right or wrong, it's just an approach. And I would suggest, for purposes of communicating the goals to the staff, to the community, we keep it clear, we keep it concise, we keep it focused. That's not to say that we're not going to use those strategies as we go through the process of attaining those goals.
Anything? Okay.
So I support the goals the way they are outlined here. I just wanted to ask if during the year, in regards to professional development, we always support and encourage professional development. If we could consider what obstacles there may be stopping some teachers from participating in professional development, and if there's ways that we could support that more. So could we have lunchtime professional development here on a rotating basis at different hours during the day? Could we have dinner time PD with dinner invited? Is there a way we can make it more enticing to accomplish some of the goals around major curriculum work that you want to see get done?
Well, one thought I would throw out then, I mean, I think it's a great idea to look at that and to have that conversation, to identify what obstacles, if any, there are, or are we not providing as much PD as we might, were said obstacles able to be overcome. Let's have that conversation. Perhaps a good place for that conversation would be curriculum committee, because there is a clear curricular nexus to much, not all, but much of the PD that we do. So I would suggest that'd be a good place to start having that conversation. We have our director of curriculum and instruction, who's a member of that committee. So all you curriculum committee people, and we're meeting this Friday, by the way, might be a good topic to put on that group's radar. Yeah, great question.
Any other comments?
Well, at the risk of droning on, I completely understand and agree that the sort of publishing the goals publicly in the abbreviated form makes perfect sense. But I guess I would just sort of exhort fellow board members that we keep in mind some of these indicators for ourselves in terms of thinking about how we're making progress through the year. It doesn't have to be official, but it seems like, at least I wanted to throw out there that it would be a great way for us to keep asking ourselves about how we're doing.
Well, in fact, if we do occasional dipsticking of how we're doing on those goals through the year, there's no reason not to consider the strategies as part of that conversation. I think that's a way to keep it in the mix.
Anyone else? Yeah, I appreciate the, how succinct these goals are. Having been on this board for a long time, sometimes they've gone on to second pages and multiple parts, so this is quite an accomplishment. And I agree, I think we should all, whether it's electronically or physical copy, have this with our board staff, so that when I ask in a few months, how do people think we're doing, everyone has something to talk about. Okay. Then if there's no more discussion, all those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. Thank you. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to adopt the budget development calendar and timelines for the 2014-15 budget?
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Laura.
run to.
We're not have a budget for next year.
I'm not doing any of this.
Make the spring a lot easier.
Joe, do you want to
Yeah, just to give you an overview, Tom developed the draft budget calendar. It's patterned very, very closely with last year's, which for those of you who are new to the board, was really somewhat of a departure from prior years in that we really front-loaded the process. Typically, we didn't start looking at or discussing budgetary matters at the board level until typically late January, and as you can see, we're scheduled again this year to start talking about potential programs and services as early as late November, to bring a rollover budget to your attention in early December, and to start looking at a first draft budget in early January. So it really accelerates the process by 5 or 6 weeks earlier than we had done in years past, but it's right on target with the way we proceeded last year. So I think the response from last year's board members was, I think, generally very positive. So our thought is, at least in the short term, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's run with that for a while and make sure it continues to be productive and well-paced use of our budget discussion time. And again, I think we're administratively, we've made it was a bit of a gear shift for us to start so early, but I think we're there again this year, and I think we saw the benefits in getting ahead on this process. So that's. I also, excuse me, I have one more thing just to put on your calendars. This budget calendar schedules our Saturday budget workshop for March 8th. So you may want to throw that on your own personal planners early, and do your best to keep it free if you can. It tends to be an important 3 hours or so of our time leading up to adopting a budget in early April.
Yes, very good. Thank you for highlighting that. Thanks for putting that together. Any questions about this? All right, thanks again. All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve additional mentors for the 2013-14 school year?
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Laura. Any questions, comments? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the appointment of Justin Weisenthal as intramural coordinator for the 2013-14 school year at a stipend of $1,281 in accordance with the RTA salary schedule for 2013-14.
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Laura. Any questions?
I have a question. What does the intramural coordinator do? What intramurals do you have?
We have for probably four years or so. Actually, the first one was what's that?
I know we did wrestling at one point.
Yeah, we run a program every year for middle school and high school kids. It varies as to what we offer in a particular year. I remember a number of years ago, there was some interest. There was interest on the part of a number of kids in wanting to learn more about wrestling. I think there was some thought that we might migrate at some point towards bringing wrestling back to Rhinebeck. So we got somebody on our staff who had experience in wrestling, and they ran like a 4 or 5 week program, maybe once a week, twice a week. Again, it's pretty flexible. It depends on the availability of an adult with expertise in a given sport to come in here and run an activity. It's been primarily instructional, not that there isn't some competition, but it's not set up like it's not like a league for kids, although it could be that, it just has not gone in that direction. The coordinator obviously has to get adults to, with an interest in a particular sport, agree to teach or conduct a clinic on a particular sport for a period of time, make sure that the gym space is reserved, that equipment is ready, coordinate it with get kids to sign up, so we have a program where there's a good number of kids. A couple of years ago, there was some interest on the part of some middle school kids in learning more about lacrosse, and it actually blossomed into a team. So, but it may not. It may be weight training, a 5 or 6 week program in the weight room, working with kids who may not ordinarily, or may be used to lifting. So, I mean, it could run the gamut, and we try to run it, through the whole year. Again, we've got to coordinate gym space. Winters are particularly difficult because gym space is at a premium, but that's kind of a
We don't
dumb.
have any programs booked yet.
No, we've got to hire somebody to put together a program for us.
Once yoga was offered, and I heard that was popular.
That's right, Mr. Bynum did a yoga class.
I said right, there we go. So, any other questions? All those in favor?
Quidditch is.
That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve additional summer 2013 curriculum work?
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Laura. Any questions? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to appoint Daria Barry to the civil service position of teacher aide assigned to Chancellor Livingston Elementary School effective September 3, 2013 at a rate of $16.11 per hour for a 6.5-hour day in accordance with the Annie salary schedule for 2013-14 with a 26-week probationary period.
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Laura. Any questions? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to appoint 2013-14 CLS before school enrichment program instructors?
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Laura. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the appointment of additional advisors for Rhinebeck High School for the 2013-14 school year?
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Laura. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve additional fall coaching staff for the 2013-14 school year, effective September 25, 2013, prorated?
So moved.
Field hockey, junior varsity, Cassie Wintermantle, $2,547.
So moved.
So moved by Mark, seconded by Laura. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the appointment of Donna Ellis as clerk of the Board of Education for the 2013-14 school year, effective October 15, 2013, at an annual stipend of $9,667 prorated?
So moved.
By Mark, second by Laura. Any questions or comments? Donna, we're really excited about you joining us here at the table. Yeah, as much as we will miss Meg, she will not miss us. I'll miss you guys. Just so you finish.
She will miss the hours.
All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the list of additional emergency conditional substitute teachers for the 2013-14 school year?
So moved.
By Mark. Seconded by Laura. Any questions? Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the previous year's school tax bills, refunding a total of $49,721.12 and reduction adjustments, and to make the appropriate refund to the property owner from the district's tax certiorari reserve?
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Laura. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve as a first reading and consideration of board policy number 9192, parent rights to annual professional performance review, composite scores and quality ratings under Education Law 3012C.
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Laura. Any questions or comments? I know this is mandated, this is the policy committee has not yet seen this, so the plan is for the first reading, and then, because we have to be in compliance with state
Right,
law.
and this is boilerplate language from legal counsel, and I included for you the background on that. It involves a policy statement, which is in your packet, and then it also involves not part of the policy per se, but form an exhibit that our legal counsel is advising the district to have available to outline the parameters of access to information under New York state law, as well as a form that a parent can use to access that information, although the form itself is not a requirement of the law. It's a way for us to process and verify who is requesting the information, because there are limits under that state law as to who has access to that information. So our attorneys have, I think, done a pretty good job of laying it out for us. We've worked with them over the course of the last couple of days to make some minor tweaks to the forms, so that they're more user-friendly and appropriate for us. But it's a requirement of every school district to have these policies and to provide that access under the guidelines of the law. So this is a first reading. I would anticipate the policy committee will have an opportunity to review that when they meet later this week. They're going to have an awfully long meeting later this week, but that's so what else is new for policy. And then the intent would be to bring it back to the board for a final reading and adoption at our October 8th meeting.
Any questions or comments on that? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion to move into executive session for the purpose of discussion of a contract with a particular vendor?
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by Laura. All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. Thank you.